Hello, I'm Lauren Millar. This time on Journeys, I'm going to introduce you to a man with a true sense of adventure and a passion for wilderness and wildlife. Bruce McLellan studies bears. For 17 years, he has trapped and radio-collared and tracked black bears and grizzlies through the wilderness. And if you have ever tried to put a collar on a grizzly bear, you'll know part of what I mean when I say he has a true sense of adventure. As we continue to lose the wilderness because of human development with highways and railways and housing and tourist attractions, the natural habitat for the grizzly bear is seriously compromised. Here, the mountains of British Columbia are one of the last bastions for the grizzly because throughout most of the world, they're now extinct. After 17 years of watching grizzly bears in their natural habitat, Bruce McLellan has learned a thing or two about bears and about humans. And when the two meet, fear, hysteria, and misunderstanding usually prevail, and the bear usually loses. However, Bruce McLellan believes that bears and humans can live in harmony, but it's the humans that will have to adapt.
Yeah, I can see you left the bait for me.
Rib night.
Rib night tonight.
What kind of ribs?
It's like pork.
Pork ribs. Smile. Where do you get it?
The grocery store. This stuff. We get all kinds of.
For the next 2 weeks, Bruce McLellan will leave his daily routine as a wildlife biologist to collar bears near Golden, British Columbia. Scientists say Bruce McLellan is one of the best bear researchers in the world.
I guess I've pretty well always known that I was going to be a wildlife biologist. Since I was a little kid, I always liked catching animals and handling animals and had lots and lots of pets when I was small.
Okay. I'm just going to put these are 2 collars, so we have a selection of 5 bear day. 5 bear day.
Ooh, optimistic.
I like the wild setting. That was probably as important as the animals, was wild animals in a wild area. And bears started in '78. I remember the fellow that was my boss for many years, and a fellow I respect an awful lot, he said to me, he says, well, where do you want to live? Northern BC or in the Kootnays? And I said, well, I like the Kootnays. So he said, well, work on bears. And that's when I began, the bear work.
Okay.
Do you want the radio?
Bruce may not have started bear research with any particular passion for bears, but that quickly evolved. Today, he'll collar and snare bears with the help of helicopter pilot Don McTighe and co-researcher John Flaw, a Parks Canada warden.
Oh, okay. So, what have you forgotten? How many bears is the big issue. We know how many are being shot legally, but we don't know from what size population they're being taken from. And plus, we don't know how many are being shot for other reasons. And there's lots of other reasons why bears end up getting shot. National parks also realize that their land mass is much too small to maintain a viable population of grizzly bears over the long haul, because bears are found at such low numbers and have such enormous ranges.
We're thinking of pulling the Ventigo out and putting traps in courts, because we've heard rumors that there's berries in courts and bears are in courts.
There's a bear down there! Running! Right there!
Around here, an adult male grizzly will probably range about 1,000 square kilometers, easily roaming outside the protection of wilderness parks. Wandering into developed areas is often a fatal move.
Golden Study area was selected because it not only has wilderness parks, unroaded areas, it's got logged areas, plus it's got a large valley, the Columbia River Valley, that has had rural settlement, plus a big town in it. Mm-hmm. So we're able to really look at a real broad scope of human impacts on bears. Then we can kind of figure out what really bugs the bears, what doesn't bug them so much, so we can kind of guide human development as time goes on, so we can minimize the impacts on bears. It's actually
Realizing its wilderness parks are not large enough to protect bears, Parks Canada radio collared about a dozen to track their movements. Half died. Bruce was asked to investigate whether that data was a fluke or evidence of a crashing bear population. How do you decide what's a good place, Bruce?
Big enough tree. Actually, the very first grizzly bear I ever caught in 1978 was the snare was attached to a tree that size.
Yeah.
And it was a 640-pound male, and he'd eaten the tree right off. Jeez. So we couldn't see. The first thing we do when we catch a bear is we look to see how it's caught the snare around its foot. Sure. Because it might be caught by one or two toes, so we want to be very careful. And we were sitting there, me and this fellow a long time ago, and saying, how's he cut? Good, he's fine. It's caught up high, looks really clean. But what's the other end of the snare attached to? Because there was nothing there. Oh, he had eaten it right off. So we like to get a fairly good-sized tree.
Yeah. Investigating how humans affect a bear's survival, the study will look at three things: how far the bears travel, what kinds of habitats they prefer, and how well they're reproducing.
Where are you putting that one? Other than in my mouth.
Bruce would like to catch a female in this trap. Tracking females tells him how many cubs are added to the population, how many years between litters, and how many ultimately survive.
So, bait time.
Okay, let me just drag around here.
You got the dog? John Flaw has the dubious honor of walking the dog, a tongue-in-cheek term for scenting the area with the rank aroma of decomposing meat. What do they prefer to hunt?
Well, they're generally not real hunters. I have noticed they like the ones that have moose in their area will like to get them, but that's rare. Most of their diet's vegetation. Most of the time it's berries and grasses and sedges and various forbs and fish on the coast. But of course, in here there's no fish anymore. Used to be. So they'll eat the odd elk and moose, but they're not like wolves. They don't selectively go after animals hunting a lot.
Oh,
they're
I
not,
see.
They're not that kind of a
How do they get so fat on berries?
Berries. Around here, it's berries.
Berries will make you fat.
Oh, yeah. We've done a lot of work with energetics, particularly with black bears, measuring fat deposition rates. And some bears their lean body weight may only be slightly over 100 pounds. Like adult female lean body weight will be, a black bear will be about 100 pounds. But at certain times of the year, they'll be gaining up to 2 pounds a day.
Bears aren't just resourceful eaters, they're shrewd. And trapping becomes a game of wits.
Occasionally we get very, very smart bears that know the game, and then we start setting lots. I remember in one place once we had this bear that we wanted to catch more just to see if we could do it because he was so smart. Yeah. And we had, I think, 10 or 11 set traps all around this area, and we never did catch him.
So they get wise to it.
Oh yeah. He was a lot wiser than we were. This went through well. It's nice and tight.
So where does it actually...
I'll show you.
Okay.
We hide this. This sets to get it to lie just right in here like that.
All right.
And then you cover it up when the animal steps. This is going to fling some dirt maybe.
Okay.
See, when the animal steps in it, it goes up around his foot.
Oh, and so the harder he pulls, the tighter
it gets. And this is a slider, so it doesn't slide back.
Right.
So he's caught like by the foot. Actually, that didn't spring that well. So
it really doesn't look like it would cause any damage or hurt them at all.
Oh, occasionally it cuts.
Does it?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally. I would guess 1 in 5 bears gets a cut. Yeah. But it's, as I say, they live tough lives, so you see what they do to each other. Yeah. I mean, I've found them just, caught them totally torn up. Oh. For example, there was one old male we caught in 1981. We called him Singleton because he had one of everything left. He had one eye, he had one testicle, he had, he had scar tissue everywhere. His face, half his face was gone, including his eye. So they do a lot of damage to each other. And he survived. Which isn't rational. Oh yeah, he was fine. He was with a 5-year-old female. And he was about 20. Oh man. But that doesn't, rationalize putting them through unnecessary stress, but the game plan here is that by learning about them, of course, we'll learn how to minimize our impacts on them. So a few bears go through some stress, and hopefully we'll be able to keep the rest of them around for a long time.
Oh, there's your bag of meat.
There's it is. I hope they won't spring this off again.
Geez, if people could just smell that rather than see it.
Well, that's actually not that strong yet. It's fresher than I'd like.
So they actually prefer it as it gets more rotten?
No, I think...
Oh, man, that stinks. That's not so fresh.
No, I think they like it best when it's somewhat fresh.
Yeah.
Actually, when it gets too raunchy, full of maggots and stuff, completely, they don't really like it anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's not a bad spot for a picnic.
Heavy munching zone.
So you said you caught something when you were eating lunch once?
We weren't eating lunch, but we've set traps, backed off, and watched bears get caught. One time, actually, we had 2 young grizzly bears that were so anxious to get in our bait that while we were setting the trap, we turned around to get our bait, and they were in the back of our pickup truck eating it. So we had to shoo them out. They were yearlings. Shoo them out, set the trap, stand back, watch them get caught, process them.
Jeez.
They were trouble. They were... Bears like that don't live long. They were in... We knew they were there. They were bears that were going to probably become trouble for sure.
Yeah.
So we ended up catching them. This was 1979, and they lived for 3 or 4 months, and then they got shot.
Oh, jeez.
They weren't problems. They were one of the few that were poached, I'd say. They were shot intentionally, I believe. It was hard to piece it together, but that's what we think. We don't know who by.
So how many more do we have to check?
3.
3. So hopefully we'll get something.
Well, this baguette's just about had it. Come back here.
See this one?
Okay.
It's already gone. You go to the bit. So will you want us to move back?
Yes, please. Just we'll let him go down now. Okay, thanks.
Where did you hit him?
In the bump.
How long does it usually take?
He should be down in 4 or 5 minutes. Not a real big bear, but...
So it gives you an adrenaline rush.
No, they always do.
Does it still do that for you?
Oh, yeah.
Does it?
You bet.
I guess you respect them.
Much so. Well, time when you start taking it real casually, it's time to do something else.
Yeah. You want us to go farther, John?
Yeah, we'll just back over here.
Okay.
Go down quietly.
So what do you usually do now?
We wait for about 4 minutes, let it go out by itself. And
Have a
eat.
snack.
Have something to
Have a
eat.
snack. Yeah, I see Don's right down there having a snack already.
Eat something, little displacement behavior, you pick berries or tell jokes.
Yeah, because you can really sense a lot of power and
But this is getting the bear at its ugliest. This isn't how they normally are.
Oh, certainly.
That's the problem with filming bears being caught is they're obviously under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
We're under stress. It's a bit of a, in reality, a bit of an ugly situation.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it only lasts for 4 or 5 minutes for the bear, and then it's out, and then we proceed, and 2 hours from now it'll be on its way.
Yeah. How do you...
All the rest of its life, it's doing just fine.
It's doing just fine until it runs into one of Bruce's traps.
Yeah.
How close are you to that bear when you tranquilize it?
That was a little closer than I liked, but there was a lot of brush in the way that never gave me a really good shot. I don't want to hit a branch and deflect, and then sometimes the dart hits the bear. You don't know how much drug went in or not, so it's nice to get a good, clean shot where you know it went in, got all the drugs, so you know what state the bear you're working with. So I waited till I got a good shot. I don't know how far. 3-4 meters?
Yeah,
4
up
meters?
here to yeah, it was
Great
close.
snare, and it also wasn't going back. When it's at the end of the cable pulling, I feel good because it can't really give a lot of force.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
can't hurt itself, and it can't break the cable.
Right.
But when it goes back away, then it can come and can get the full length of the cable, and then it can hit with more force and hurt its foot more. So, so I don't
right,
like
of
it.
course.
But here I stayed because it was not putting a lot of stress on itself.
There I was thinking fear for us, and you were thinking of...
Fear for the bear, yeah, right. No, I don't want the bear to hurt its foot. But it hurts. But then they're pretty tough animals.
Yeah, I guess they must be.
They get little bits of pain here and there throughout their lives, like when they fight each other, they get cut up pretty well.
And why do they do that?
Food or mates, the
Yeah.
only two things that
So
really
it's a
count in the big league. Anyway, we should go check this bear.
Okay.
We're hoping it's a female, but to tell you the truth, I haven't looked in detail yet.
If it's a female, are there a chance that there are cubs around? Or?
There is a chance, but we'll find out.
Probably the most important part of this study is reproductive rates and bear survival. So Bruce always hopes he's snared a female. Yeah, shit. Maybe tomorrow. Radio collaring a female allows him to track any cubs she may have. And to really understand what's happening with a bear population, Bruce needs a large study sample and time. Bears are one of the slowest reproducing mammals on Earth. Females don't bear cubs until they're 5 or 6. And then they only have litters every 2 or 3 years, and half survive.
Is that the dart?
That's the dart.
That's a mean mother.
I wouldn't like it.
I guess he weighs a bit more than you do, but still.
Yeah, a little bit.
Bruce and John work quickly to process the bear before the drug wears off. In about 45 minutes, this bear will be radio collared, ear tagged, weighed, measured, analyzed for fat, and deprived of one small tooth to determine its age.
So where are we going to work on him? Guess we could work on him right where he is.
What were you doing to his eyes, John?
I put eye cream on, an eye salve. It just protects his eyes from
Light, bugs, dust, all the kinds of things.
sticks, and then we put a blindfold on him just to protect his eyes further.
They can't blink quite as well when they're under drugs. So
Right.
Snapping that cable means there's not much between the researchers and one annoyed grizzly. But Bruce has never had to shoot a bear, nor has he ever been injured.
smooth.
God, you guys have got to trust your
Drugs. Well, Don will be bringing a snare. This drug we're using now is a lot more trustworthy than some of the others we used to use.
So what are some of the signs that he's waking up?
This guy
drug, you'll start moving
will be
his
number
head
90 Gretzky.
around. I guess that's a name for this guy.
We're going to call this Bear Gretzky.
99.
Number 99. I'm sorry, Bruce, what did you say about how do you know that he's waking up?
With this drug, he starts moving his head around a little bit. This drug, they can start moving their head around. It isn't really a big problem. The other drug we use, if they start just moving their mouth and their lips, it's time to back off.
Yeah.
But this one,
So snorting through his nose like that's no
no
problem.
big deal. You always gotta remember what drug you're using. Get yourself killed by getting them mixed up. So, nail, red in the right.
What's he doing?
Oh, displacement. Don gets kind of stressed out, so he just chops wood usually when they're working.
Get out.
No, we need something to weigh him on.
Like 2 or 3 bears, you'll be chopping wood too.
So you tag their ears and you collar them as well. Why is that?
They change in weight so darn much, bears. You know, some years this guy, I don't know, he's what? I guess 350, something like that. Next year he could be 450. His canines are worn, his incisors are worn to his gun.
So that's how you tell whether they...
Well, you look at his teeth, his molars are worn, rubbed off. We tell by the tooth, but this gives us an estimate.
Look at the size of those teeth.
Worn teeth give an estimate of age. The extracted tooth will later be tested for a more accurate judgment.
Between his teeth. Okay. Who feels strong? It's time to wham.
Time to wham.
Maybe you should get that done pretty quick, John.
An adult male grizzly can weigh up to 540 kilograms, or 1,200 pounds.
Okay, she's gone. She's off. Excuse me. 308.
308? Yeah.
I didn't believe you. You really listened.
In 48 U.S. states, grizzly bears are endangered, with only 1% of their original habitat remaining. In Canada, they're considered vulnerable, at risk. They've been wiped out of the prairies and south-central British Columbia. Their last true refuge is northern BC and the Yukon.
Tape measure.
It's right here.
Trade you a tape measure for the knife.
Okay.
Bruce believes that grizzlies are highly intelligent animals, capable of adapting their behavior through learning.
Well, chest, 103.
In fact, grizzlies seem to adapt to human behavior more readily than humans will tolerate grizzlies. Humans caused more than 80% of grizzly deaths. In a nearby town that calls itself the grizzly bear capital of Canada, 60 to 70 grizzlies were shot or moved in the past few years.
Berry belly.
Berry belly. 112. Nice bigger. Start with width. Want width? 11 and a half. Length. 16.
What does that feel like?
Feel it. It's got lots of fat, a lot of big padding, and it's hot too.
Yeah, it's
quite hot.
Why?
Why? Because I don't know.
He's stressed.
Yeah, no, they're just warm. It's just you can touch through there. There's a lot of fat, heavy tissue under there. This one.
Yeah, it's very thick.
Yeah. In the den, all the thick hide comes off when they hibernate. On a lot of bears, it's.
There's great debate among scientists about how many grizzlies are left in Canada. There's also debate about how many are needed to keep the species alive and well. One thing is certain, numbers are dwindling.
So is this characteristic of grizzlies?
Of a grizzly. Yep. But a lot of it, as you can tell, is fur.
It's fur.
Beautiful fur.
Oh, yeah.
Ready for winter. Pretty bear. So you can name them. People ask us why we named them. Give us a name.
Be
It's got to be Gretzky.
Gotta be Gretzky.
Gotta be Grizzly.
That's right.
That's true.
It's chosen for me.
The great one.
The great one, exactly.
He's probably not much on the ice, but I'll bet you he'd be great in a football field.
Getting smart, huh?
They're bright. They're a smart animal.
That one's still okay?
Not really. I got a feeling this guy might have snuck through the back door. Either way, I'm starting to view the work I do is through a long-term vision on how this province and this country can develop over the decades and centuries even. And if our vision includes maintaining large carnivores, and particularly grizzly bears, then we're going to have to make a few sacrifices on where and when we can do certain things. I'm not saying we'll need large, huge areas of pristine wilderness where nobody goes, because bears are very, very adaptable. But we have to know how far we can push them.
How far we can push grizzlies before they edge toward the brink of extinction is an elusive question, but one Bruce McLellan intends to answer. His study area links the Rockies and the Columbia Mountains across the Columbia River Valley. Scientists believe the valley is a potential bridge between bear populations in Rocky Mountain parks and bears in Columbia Mountain parks. However, this area has been fractured by things like roads, railways, towns, farms, and logging. And studies show when bears try to cross such developed areas, death rates are high.
We're not too sure of what this was.
Oh, yeah?
It might have been a wolverine.
Is that right?
They might have. They didn't eat much of the bait, and what they ate inside the cubby mostly. So
you've just reset it?
John will do that. I'll take the dog for a walk.
Ironically, the most important area to focus grizzly research now is not true wilderness, but rather the developing areas between wild spaces. Bruce spent 12 years studying bears in a place called the Flathead, near the Alberta-Montana border. There, where there were few people, grizzlies survived well. But bears are relentlessly driven by hunger and an acute sense of smell. So around here, towns and farms alike draw bears like magnets. And any bear that hungers for the tastes in human settlement won't live long.
It does look a bit comical, I have to say. You dragging that all over the bush.
Not our laughs over it.
Yeah, the joke never ends. We've been giggling at it for a couple of decades.
Nobody cooks ribs like Bruce.
You're right. Pretty poor berries here, John. We should move to Quartz Creek.
Bruce's Flathead study still yields invaluable information about how grizzlies live in unpopulated areas. But this project will offer a unique comparison. How bears survive where humans are everywhere and not always in sync with wildlife.
So big fella. I don't know if we can get through, shoot through those trees now. It looks pretty thick. Pretty thick. Hey, big guy. Okay, he's a real guy. Okay, big fella. He's got a lot of room. Okay, here we go. Here he comes. 147. I don't think so. I think it's in. You see it in?
They're right on the face of the tail.
Okay, let's just back off. Let him mellow up. Oh, what a pretty bear. Boy.
Okay.
Come on, guys. Come on. Don't make him charge anymore. Let's back off and leave him go. We're kind of wrecking his day, that's for sure.
Sounds like it.
Poor guy.
One dart can run here all day.
By tomorrow, he'll be back at it.
Yeah. But a little sore, Bruce.
A little sore, but I don't think it's enough to really slow him down too much.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for them when we're doing this.
Yeah.
'Cause it's just so unlike them, you know, to be
They're so grand
tangled up
and vulnerable.
and also they're behaving unnaturally. And this is what you're seeing now is a bear acting like bears never act.
Yeah.
Usually they're just up here eating berries, peaceful, just enjoying themselves. I think he's going to come right out. I don't think he got that much.
I can go and test him a little bit.
And you'll give him a little test.
Brave, John.
What, ski pole?
What kind of gun does John have?
It's a shotgun.
That's a shotgun.
John Woods is officially in charge of this Parks Canada study, and today he lends a hand with field work.
No, we've got to load up. What we want to do is assess whether we have to shoot him with a dart gun again, or we can just get him with a ski pole. Come right over here. Okay, you got some. How much do you have? How much have you got? He's not that big, you know that. He's big, though. He's big, though. He's not huge, but he's big. He's looking pretty good to me. He's looking nice and relaxed. Okay, he's going down now. He's got the old head shake. Okay, big guy. How are you? Yep. That was nice. He went down nice and quiet. Well, one thing that would be good to know is his foot is fine. There's no cuts or anything with his foot.
Use this as a safety.
Yeah.
Here's a new one. We'll use this one. It's still.
He's not that big.
No, he's not.
He's.
We might be able to win.
Yeah.
300? 350?
At least. Boy, he's been sure through a few scraps, hasn't he?
Okay. No previous here,
This is a.
Let's go. Anywhere?
Yeah. Sure pretty. Oh, friend.
So what are you, when you're radio tracking them after they have their collars on, what are you looking for?
Well, several things. Once an animal's collared, you've got a known individual. Mm-hmm. And some things we look at are to do with movements and habitat, which tells us, where they go, when they go there, what times they do various things, which kind of terrain do they live in, and we can always go to the sites where we know the bear is and either watch it if they're opener sites, mm-hmm. or at least go in after and see what they're feeding on and kind of figure out what makes them tick. The other important thing about these is we know when they die and what kills them, and therefore, and we know we can also follow the females and find out how many cubs they have, what happens to the cubs. So if you know how many are being born and how many are dying, you know what the population's doing.
Right. So far that's been just a best guess, sort of in areas like this?
Yeah, we got a lot of pretty good hunches here and there, but we really don't know. The main thing is, how do we count them? Mm-hmm. We don't know if the populations are going up or down or sideways or mm-hmm. anything, it's really hard to know. Mm-hmm. So we're working on ways of censusing them. I guess a major concern we also have is that as the numbers of people greatly increase in BC, which they have been doing and are continuing to do, the valleys are all getting settled. Mm-hmm. And as time goes on, we're forming what we call islands of populations,
right.
which are where animals can live and interbreed amongst themselves in a small area, but there's no chances of them moving, because when they try to move, particularly bears, mm-hmm. they're vulnerable to not making it through human settlement areas.
Mm-hmm.
They get, unlike a lot of animals, even wolves and that, bears get sucked into garbage and fruit trees and the whole gamut, dog foods and compost, and they end up getting in trouble and getting shot. So they have a difficult time often moving through human settlement areas. Mm-hmm. It's clear why people have a fear of them, because they are so big. They're a big carnivore,
mm-hmm.
The second largest carnivore in the world.
What's the first?
Polar bear.
Oh, okay.
But
so the idea here is there's every year that he's alive, he lays down another layer of cementum that cements the tooth in the jaw. Mm-hmm. So there's dark and light bands. It's denser in the wintertime than in the summer when it's being laid down. So you can take a thin section of that, count back, and figure out the age of the bear. So that's why we take that. You see, it's a tiny
little tree.
Look, compare that tooth to his canine.
Oh,
so
my
this is the tooth that he can
go on this side.
Do it on this side,
John. Right there.
There's the canine.
See the canine? And there's the one we take out.
Right.
It sticks out perhaps a millimeter or two.
This hair is turning out to be really valuable. This is the DNA samples. We just take a little bit of the loose hair. Mm-hmm. You see the roots? Can you hold them up to the light? See the tiny roots?
Right, yeah.
We can extract enough DNA from those to do a fingerprint, DNA fingerprint on the bear. So we'll know this bear forever. It was unique. Mm-hmm. The chances of a misidentification based on DNA are 1 in 3.5 million.
Not only that, if we catch her, we'll know his mother. We'll also know his sons and daughters.
Right.
So
the beauty of it, though, is not catching the bear.
The beauty of it is not having to handle these guys.
We can avoid some
I'd love
of
not to be able to have to do this.
Yeah.
So we're trying to do ourselves out of doing this as much.
Yeah.
That'll be our great success.
You can piece together an awful lot by putting radios on that will be difficult with just DNA, but for a lot of things, a lot of the questions we're asking, the DNA should hopefully suffice.
Right.
So where are we?
We have got the ear tags in, the tooth out. We're just down to measuring them up, and then we're gonna.
Should we try a weight? Feel strong? Don looks strong.
Canadians love the wilderness, but we also seem to love superhighways to get us through it. In fact, highways have become an inextricable part of Canada's national parks and a big problem for bears, causing a significant number of deaths and fragmenting bear habitat.
British Columbia now, I think, has about 3.7 million, and it's increasing quite rapidly, so it'll double in size, no doubt, in the next, 30 years or something. And most of these people are settling in valleys, and I think that is becoming a problem because it's chopping up the occupied bear habitat into smaller and smaller pieces. Plus, with more and more people, you get more and more people using the grizzly bear habitat where they live, and then you get problems of bears getting conditioned to people's foods and associating food with people. Plus, you get problems of bears just getting habituated to people, not being frightened of them, getting used to them.
So the difference between your ground traps and the heli traps are that you could just get higher up in remote areas.
The main difference is success rate.
Which is better?
Much higher with the heli ones, much higher.
Yeah.
Ground ones are good for black bears, and they were great in the flathead study, but here the grizzlies aren't in the valley as frequently as they're up high. I think that's partially due to people around here are a lot more abundant in the valley than up high.
Tell me why you back in again.
Well, I back in case I've caught a cub. I can drive forward a lot faster than I can drive back. So if I've caught a cub and the mother bear decides to put the run on me, I can drive out pretty fast.
No cub today, but Bruce is always ready for the unexpected.
This I find quite surprising. I've caught 2 wolverine and bear traps in my life, and they were both on the same day. And one was there, and one was in Yoho Park.
Oh, yeah?
On the same day. And they put on a little bit of hissing and stuff, but they're not in the same league as a bear. They're not aggressive in the traps.
Hello. Hi. Nothing.
Robin Monroe is one of Bruce's graduate students who helps with traps here in the valley.
Really quite quiet.
So,
Well-behaved bear.
how many more?
Sites?
Yeah.
Two more.
Wow. Have this.
Then we go on to other things.
All right,
We go
all
on
right.
to the important things.
All right.
Because this is not where you learn about bears. If you are not careful, you can be a real serious problem for bears living in a place like this, because you can attract bears and become a problem, or make problem bears out of your behavior.
How?
Well, primary is fruit trees, compost, dog food, animals that aren't looked after well. Bears eat generally things we eat. We're both omnivores, so the things we like having around for foods end up to be foods for bears. There's one fellow up here that I know is, I think it's 3 black bears that he has shot, but he just didn't know. He kept his garbage on his porch, and whenever a bear came by, he'd shoot it instead of dealing with his garbage. But I mean, it was dangerous what this guy was doing. He had the reason we went to investigate it because we heard a rumor that there was a grizzly in his yard, and we were interested in finding out if we could catch it for research purposes. Plus, he had shot one of our radio-collared black bears. So when we got there, we talked to him. We found out, yes, he had shot our radio-collared black bear, but he didn't know if he killed it. He ended up killing it after. But he'd shot another bear a week before, and he'd left it. It was no more than 20 meters from his porch in the forest, a dead black bear that had been there for a week. He knew there was at least one grizzly. There was 2 that had been in his yard. He had 2 little children playing right in front of his house. They were no more than 10 meters from this dead black bear. So it was just through his not understanding how to live, I mean, really basic stuff, not understanding how to live in bear country, not only was he threatening the life of his children, he was, of course, threatening the life of all these bears. I mean, there's amazing stories out there. Shoot, this is pretty boring. But I'm still optimistic that we may change. Once you get all the people at least to respect them and maybe modify their behavior a little bit, like pick their fruit maybe before they're falling on the ground, or bring their animals in at night, take the garbage out in the morning instead of the night before, all these fairly trivial things. We'll never solve it so that humans and grizzly bears can live in North America without ever having an impact on each other, but We can minimize it. I hope.
I wonder how the two Johns are doing.
Well, Robin's at the radio. I don't know. I think Glacier Circle.
Yeah?
We had it. I think we might get one there.
How humans live in prime grizzly habitat is only part of the problem. Competing for the same space are logging operations, railways, towns, golf courses, campgrounds, lodges, and of course hunting. With an adult male's average range of 1,000 square kilometers, the species cannot survive in a fractured habitat. Right now, only 12% of grizzlies die of natural causes. The rest die at human hands.
Dinner, I'm so tired I almost fell asleep.
Bruce, they've got an adult grizzly at Glacier Circle.
Oh.
Good!
So John Woods wants to know what the film crew.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so do you want to talk to John Woods or?
We'll meet them at Bear Falls.
Meet them at Bear Falls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Robin.
We're transforming gradually from a very pioneer society where we just take and exploit and take whatever we can do and eliminate anything we don't like. So it's gradually changing. 30 years ago, everybody grabbed a gun.
Yeah.
It was a reflex for everybody. Where I grew up, boy, when grizzlies came down to feed on salmon in our drainage, it was shot.
Yeah.
Everybody did. Well, that's changing now. People are now wise enough, and I hope our ethics are getting to a point where we respect other life forms just for the sake of there being another life form enough that we will make good decisions. Okay, big guy. That's it. Well, I'm gonna have to take him in the shoulder, I think, because he's not gonna get up. He's too quiet. You gonna get up, Harry? Boy, I don't like shoulder shots, though. Oh my God. That dart tumbled. Okay. Let's just back off.
Do you think that over the long term, in the next 100 years, we're going to be able to sustain the wildlife like the grizzly?
Again, I'm an optimist that people, not the bears aren't going to change much, but I'm an optimist that the people are going to want it.
Will we want it enough in good time to protect them?
I think in parts of southern BC it's dwindled. We know that in the Okanagan and some of the flat country in the central part of the south central part of the province, that it's going to be very difficult to recover them. But fortunately in British Columbia, an awful lot of the land is very rugged and fairly inhospitable for humans. Mm-hmm. And in those places, I think we'll still have a bit of time to make these good decisions. You faking, Harry?
His head's coming up.
If he's faking, he's sure good at it.
It's funny because he doesn't look totally out.
How you doing? What's up?
In a few days, Bruce McLellan will return to his normal routine as a wildlife biologist. His researchers will track the movements of these collared bears. They hope they'll find some answers to protecting grizzlies in a disappearing wilderness.
Okay, get the mouth of an old bear.
Look at that.
See, his teeth are worn right off.
He doesn't even have that big canine.
He's an old timer. If we want to maintain grizzly bears and other large carnivores over the long haul, we cannot let people just live everywhere. There's got to be land use planning over a large scale so that there are opportunities for people to live this way, but there's also places that people do not live. But there's always this, what I call the ratchet effect that happens, is that things will be planned for and maintained for a while, and then all of a sudden there'll be some switch in policy or government or something, and then development occurs, and it goes. There's a ratchet, clicks one way. You never undevelop, or very, very rarely. And as time goes on, just keep clicking away, and eventually it's starting to disappear.
It's tough though, because this ratchet effect that you're talking about is almost unavoidable, you'd think.
Yes, it is
Even when
difficult.
you-
Over time, give it enough time, things end up getting developed. Enough time and too many people. But I guess it's a matter of people voicing their opinion on the lifestyle they want. And hopefully people will like a lifestyle that includes wild country and wild animals in it. So we're pretty well done, aren't we? We nicked the collar and cut the end off?
Yep.
There, you'll be a cool old dude. He's an old guy, got to take care of old gentlemanly bears. Okay, here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. Here he comes. She's pretty. Oh, friend. Come on, guys. Come on, come on. Don't make them charge anymore. Maybe it's the winner. Pretty bear. Big joke never ends. We've been giggling at it for a couple of decades. Okay, let's just back off. Let him mellow out. Oh, what a pretty bear.